Welcome to my channel, and this is my first actual video about anything at all. And first video is going to be about something that I've talked about a lot and recommended to a lot of people, but it could use some analysis. So here we have Netrunner. Now, I actually like this game so much, I bought it twice. I've bought the expansion, which is basically a legacy style game that allows you to play through a campaign. I've got a bunch of the card packs because it's an LCG, so you just keep adding cards to do new things and experience more of the story and have more ways to build decks. And yeah, I bought a whole nother set, so I had another core set. And what's interesting about this game is that I never did play in tournaments. I never went to meetups. I never went to stores. I never, really got involved in the whole scene that, grew up around it. I had a couple visits just to check it out, but it's too far, too much effort. People were too far ahead of me, and not long after that, Fantasy Flight lost the license, so it didn't really matter anyway. And I also found out very quickly that I'm not actually very good at the game. Lost every game. My strategies were just blown through like tissue paper. Like, if you play chess as a hobby and then you play a grandmaster, well, they're going to annihilate you in a few seconds, to a few minutes. And then, you're gone. And you've lost already. You haven't even really started. But just the same, it is my favorite board game, card game, physical game of any kind that I've ever played. And this is very interesting for a lot of reasons. I like strategic games, I like war games, I like card games, I like, every kind. I mean, what are my other top games? Going to be like Twilight Imperium, with long turns, in-depth strategy, lots of players, lots of social aspect. Rex, heavy social aspect, lots of strategizing, old school. Games like deck builders or hand builders or drafting games. I mean, I'm after games that are really in depth. So why would a deck builder be my number one game, despite the fact that I don't have any friends who play it? I never got involved in the tournament scene, and I was never anything but an amateur. So why is it my number one game? Well, Netrunner is a very interesting game. I mean, I won't bother to explain how to play the game because there's two very long videos from Fantasy Flight that already explain that. There's already reviews that talk about how you play it, so there's no need for me to recap that. But what I will do is analyze why it's a good game. And the reason why is, out of the box, you have a very simple game in terms of what you can do strategically. As a corporation, there's no real traps you can set. You just got a real basic deck. As the runner, you're just got real basic ice, or no, not ice, ice breakers, that you can use, and it's very simplistic. But the number of card combinations for all the expansions, the number of ways you can play is absolutely staggering. Because we're not talking about, where you have two factions that fight against each other. We're not talking about Empire versus Rebellion. No, we're talking about Corps versus runners or hackers. And there are, out of the box, so many ways to play the game. If you're a corporation and you play as Jinteki, you are trying to kill the other player. Pure and simple. Your ice is designed to kill them. I didn't play a lot of Jinteki because I wanted the people who play with me to want to play again, and there's nothing that makes you not want to play a game like getting killed in your first match. I often played Wayland. Wayland is all about making money. And it is amazing how much fun you can have just playing, a a faction of corporation who's always just trying to find ways to generate lots of money and putting down real expensive ice. Haas Bioroid was all about producing androids and about security. Um, and then there's, others. NBN is basically, like a television station. It's like Comcast. All of their ice penalizes you. It either empties out your bank account or it charges you every time you go through, and you think, well, wait a minute, I'm trying to stop them. How is just, you know, doing pop-up emails, taking their money going to make me win the game? But that's kind of where the genius of the game comes in, because whatever faction you pick, you could also had a limit of cards from other factions that you can mix in. So it was quite, I don't want to say easy, but it was quite flexible and allows you to put in some chaos cards. If you're playing the runner and you put in the anarchist deck, or to put in some criminal cards. If you're the corporation, it allows you to put in some lethal cards to your high money cards, or to put in some taxing and bankrupting cards in with your, offensive, aggressive cards, and it would give you a very different gameplay experience, and it was awesome the way you could constantly keep the other player guessing. And a friend of mine who's a game designer often said, when a game's not working, what you need to do is you need to add some humor. Well, I'll tell you, playing the game, even with people who aren't all that enthusiastic about it, I had so many moments of extreme humor where I was laughing so hard because I would set a trap for them. And, if you set a trap where it sabotages them and, it does all this damage to them, well, maybe that's not so much fun for them, or maybe not even fun for you. But when they think they're attacking some high-value target and then it turns out to be, some PR stunt, that was hilarious. To see the expression on their face where it's like, oh, you just donated to charity, and they're like, no, not what I was trying to do. And you're just laughing because you set a clever trap that they didn't see through. And sometimes just the humor on the cards, the things that they would do, were just really, really fun. Now, granted, the theme, how much you like it's going to depend a lot on how much you like cyberpunk. But I happen to really like cyberpunk, and my wife really likes cyberpunk, and a lot of people I know really like cyberpunk. So I think if you have an interest in Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, anything like that, you're going to find the theme of this game super appealing. But the reason why it's the number one game is because this is a game that not only is expandable, not only is extremely flexible, where you can, just keep coming up with new ways to play the game, keep coming up with new decks, new combinations. If you're like, oh, I'm tired of this deck building, you just buy a pre-made deck that's the one that won the championships and be like, okay, I'm going to play with the championship deck. And we both know what's in it, so you don't have to be afraid. You know what's in it. You know what I can do. Now try and outplay me. You could just go purely based on skill. You could just have a pre-made deck, and play it that way. There are characters who turn the game on its ear. There's a criminal deck where the person is a white hat police officer and puts a spin on everything. There is a deck where a person is a bioroid. They're a cyborg. So they have to overcome their directives and get rid of those because those are going to hold them back. There's one where you're an AI, an evil AI on the net, and it can only play virtual cards because it's not physical. It's only in the internet. So, there's all these different really creative themes that change the game up. And that's awesome. But what really makes it genius is the way that the game is totally self-aware of the fact that people are going to try to break the game. It, out of the box, has a faction, anarchists, where the whole idea is to raise chaos and, yes, break the game. So it's like, not only are they aware you can break the game, they're like encouraging it. They're like, oh, you want to break the game? Have fun with that. Find ridiculous, combinations that someone's going to say, no, you can't play with that again. That breaks the game, and you could be like, yeah, but it was fun. Or you could say, you know what, let's play some ridiculous decks that will break the game. Obeying the rules, but let's see if we can break it, and it's, reminds me of, the old quote from the old Disney film Babes in Toyland, where the head toy maker says, what's the first thing a child does with a toy? Breaks it and see how he likes it. So it's like, if you're a person who's like, I'm tired of playing by the rules, I want to just, I want to go outside the rules, I want to do different things. Well, the game has a flexible system that encourages you to actually do that with the Anarchy deck. And, the cards just get more and more ridiculous, and, some of the cards got so overpowered that they would say, okay, these cards weren't allowed anymore in the tournaments. But if you're not playing in a tournament and you're just playing with your friends, you could say, okay, I want to play with this super overpowered cards. Is that okay? And if they're like, well, yeah, sure, you can play with that overpowered card, but I get to play with this overpowered card. And it's like, okay, let's play this game totally off balance and have fun with it. And you could, in a sense, say, well, that's, not how a game should be. That's not a great game. But think about, in video games, all the Street Fighter games that came out that were totally unbalanced, and, everybody wants to play as Ryu, everybody wants to play as Ken, everybody wants to play as Bison. Why? Because they're unbalanced. Why? Because being overpowered is fun? So the game gives you the opportunity to play overpowered if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to. And yes, you could say, well, other LCGs have, things that are broken. You could just play one of those instead. But I do think this game, more than any other card game I've ever seen, I mean, we're all familiar with this mechanic where they say, when in doubt, do what the card says. If it contradicts the rules, just do what the card says. Okay? We're all familiar with games where you can't figure out exactly what the card means because it's a little vague or it's a little weird, and you're like, wait, does it really mean to do that? And you're like, well, look it up and find out. You go online, you look up the card, and it's like, oh yeah, I can do this and that, but I can't do this. Okay, that's how it works. I've never come across a game where I looked up what the card means more times than Netrunner, where I said, if you're just playing casually, you got to point someone and say, okay, this person's a rule maker, and what they say goes, because otherwise we're never going to get through a game. It's going to be an hour and a half. It's still not going to finish a 20-minute game because we don't know exactly what this card does. So you got to say, okay, it's going to be a little broken because I'm not going to exactly do it right, but I'm going to try to do the best I can, and then later on you look up the cards and you get a better understanding and you play the game better, and the game is more fun because you're playing better, and you're playing the game the way it's meant to be played. But it is the most in-depth game I've ever seen for the complexity of figuring out what the cards do and finding out weird combinations of cards. And yes, breaking the game with weird combinations of cards. And the thing is, there's a creative aspect to that, which is just missing from other games. Why do people like games like Minecraft? Why do people like playing with Play-Doh? Why do people like to paint or draw or, do coloring books, whatever? People like to create something new. They don't like to just be, stuck with everything being the same way over and over again, and, they want to do things their own way, find their own way through. And Netrunner is a game that, while it has rules for how to play the game and the kind of decks you can build, etc., it really encourages creativity in terms of the kind of decks that you can build and the kind of combinations you can go after, the kind of traps you can set. The depth is just ridiculous. As soon as your deck is predictable, you want to take it apart and tweak it and come up with a new deck. And yeah, you could say that, just chasing meta, I can do that in Hearthstone, I don't need a physical card game to even do that. I can do it with a digital game. But I have never seen a game that does it better. I've played not every game, and there's even some big ones that I haven't played. I only own 100 games, not 100,000. I haven't played every game that ever came out. Certainly haven't played every LCG or CCG that ever came out. Haven't even played all that many. But I've never seen one that I liked better than Netrunner. I love the artwork. I love that it's asymmetrical. It uses different terminology for the runner and for the corporation. They don't really play anything alike. They lose in different ways. They win in different ways. And there is just so many ways to play the game. You could be an incredibly aggressive player. You can be a money-loving player. You can be an anarchist who's like, I don't care about winning. I just want to have chaos. And it's like, you know what? You play for chaos and I'll play to win. Or, vice versa. I'm not playing to win. I'm just playing to make you lose. And that is a viable way to play the game. So, I do think it is the most in-depth card game I've ever played. That's my initial analysis of this game after a few years. Um, I only wish there was a digital version because the world absolutely deserves the ability to play this game on the go and create decks and just keep it going and not be bound by hundreds of cards and trying to find someone to play with locally, because the initial complexity of how to play the game really scares away a lot of people, and that's a shame. Some guided tutorials that, in a digital version that shows you how to play and how to build a deck and what to do, I think that would really, really go a long way. So here's hoping when someone else picks up the license, they decide to make a digital version so more people can play this game. I think this game was meant for the internet, for people to be able to play online, not just some basic hacked together game, but with beautiful animations and, guided tutorials in the works. Think like Hearthstone, only Netrunner. I hope at some point that comes to be. But if not, I highly recommend, even now, getting Netrunner. I've never understood people who are like, well, there's no tournament scene, so I'm not interested. Maybe I'm just old. I was into gaming before that was really a big thing. Um, but I say a good game is a good game. It doesn't matter if there's tournaments going on. If I can find anybody to play this game against, I'm happy. But even if not, I just love this game. Um, and if I can squeak a game in once a year, once every few years, that's worth it to me because I absolutely adore this game. Heavily recommended. But before you dismiss it, check it out. Play it if you can, just once, just to see the bizarre mechanics and all the creative ways that you can make and break this game. You may find a lot more depth than you expect.